Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Noach. If you are a Jew or a dear friend of the Jewish people, and you want to figure out what can I do to make a difference right now to Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, and to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, from wherever I am, there is one major solution that we can all undertake together to make this world a better place right now that can make a serious and tangible difference according to Jewish wisdom and tradition. And this is connected to an initiative that's taking place in Toronto right now and across the world called Clean Speech. And this video is really inspired by Rabbi Sittner's drasha, his speech on Yom Kippur, and of course, all of his initiative taking place with leading Clean Speech Toronto with the Village Shul. The link in the show notes to sign up and get inspirational content every day, as well as the workbook that you can look at, is all in the show notes. We know very famously that around the destruction of the Second Temple, so around just 2,000 years ago, the last time that Jews really had a strong spiritual and physical presence as a klal, as a nation in Israel, there's a very famous teaching in Masechet Yoma on discussing why was the temple destroyed. Why did the Jewish people lose their connection to the land of Israel, and why was there so much destruction at this time? So the Gemara famously says in Masechet Yoma, there was Torah u'mitzvot, there was Torah learning, there were mitzvot, people were doing divine commandments, and there was even gmilut chasadim, acts of kindness. So what was wrong with the Jewish people at this time that is still wrong today? And it's an illness that takes place across our society more than ever before with our social media and our news. It says sinat chinam. That's translated as baseless hatred. There was this sense that the Jewish people were connected. We had a good vertical relationship with God, and it seems we had good deeds. The way we were treating other people was good. What was wrong was something called sinat chinam, baseless hatred. And there's so many ways to understand this, but I want to focus on one that I think is crucial for every single one of us today. Because we say that at any generation the temple's not rebuilt is as if we're still, God forbid, destroying it. And the temple represents not just sovereignty for the Jewish people and safety and security in the land, but also the whole world comes. It's a place of prayer for all peoples. The whole spiritual reality is connected to Jerusalem, and it emanates outward and creates a light for the whole world. So this is a world problem reflected within in minshur in the Jewish people. So what was sinas chinam? So very famously, we have the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan HaKohen, was very famous rabbi in the mid to late 19th century and into the 20th century. Known as a very pious and loving and caring and warm person, he popularized this idea of clean speech through a book which he authored called the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim actually comes from a pasuk in Tehillim, where it says, Mi ha'isha Chafetz Chaim, who's a person that really desires to live, to be fully alive, to live a good life, ohev yamim, to love days, lirot tov, and to see the good. Netzor l'shonecha merah, guard your tongue from ra, from evil. So King David is teaching us that there's this connection between really good living and refraining from evil speech. And what the Chafetz Chaim says in his introduction is that really, when it's talking about sinas chinam, one of the main things it's discussing, this kind of vague sense of baseless hatred, is evil speech. Hakavanahu al lashon hara gamkein. It's connected to lashon hara. And it makes sense if you really think about it. You're a great person, you're doing good deeds, you're doing chesed, you're loving, you're looking out for people in this world, you can be connected to Hashem, but your speech, the way you speak about other people, other Jews and other human beings in this world is not filled with goodness. And of course, when you really think about it, how great of a person, how kind of a person can you be if you are not careful with how you speak about people? So what do we really need to focus on? We really need to focus on clean speech. It's one thing in this world. If we want to rebuild Jerusalem and all of it represents, we need to be focused on avas chinam, baseless love, as Rav Kook says, and that is first and foremost refraining from evil speech. You know this as well from a very famous story in the Gemara in Masechet Gitin with Kamza and Bar Kamza. This is also a story that we say that the story of Kamza and Bar Kamza, Charuv Yerushalayim, whatever happened there led to the Churban of Yerushalayim, just like we talked about Sinas Chinam leading to the Churban, the destruction of the temple, this story as well. And what happened very briefly, there was a man who was the host of a party, and he had a friend named Kamza and an enemy named Bar Kamza. And he decided to invite Kamza to his party. So he sent a messenger, said, go bring Kamza. Accidentally, the messenger brings Bar Kamza to the party. Bar Kamza, the enemy, shows up, and this host is livid. Why is this person here? And again, I don't think he did anything, God forbid, like excruciatingly terrible. They're probably just not, they don't get along, they don't like each other, they're enemies, whatever. The person comes to the party and says, let me stay, because he was being kicked out by the host. He says, let me stay, please let me stay. And he kept saying no. The host kept saying no, was publicly shaming and embarrassing him. And he really sums it up by saying, kum pok, get out and leave. Arise, get up and leave. And he gets kicked out. And he tried to offer him to pay for the whole party, etc. This host wanted nothing to do with him. Get out, public shaming, using words. The next part that happens is this person's very upset. Bar Kamsa is devastated. He's embarrassed in front of his whole community. And he says, and he notices that there were rabbis there were spiritual leaders there that said nothing. So there was first this sort of embarrassing speech, and then somebody said nothing, a leader said nothing. And then the third part, sadly, and there's no way he should have done this, but the story goes that after that, he was so upset and he took revenge on his own people by telling the Romans. He made up a story, a slanderous story about the Jewish people. I don't want to get into the details of that, about what they were doing and their disloyalty, that they were Mardu ben Yehudai, the Jews have rebelled against you. And this led to the eventual destruction of the temple. And when you really think about that story, it's a misuse and it's an abusive speech. And we have different types of speech. So Lashon Hara is really true speech. It's evil speech that is true about somebody, but it is derogatory. Moshe Shemra is really a libel. It's spreading lies about somebody. And Onas Devarim is using hurtful words towards people, speaking in a way that harms somebody else. So that's really, in this story, you see all those different types of negative speeches or lack of speeches affecting the whole Jewish people, eventually affecting the empire, and then that leads to destruction. And of course, I'm not trying to make people feel so overly guilty, but we really got to be careful. In the Jewish tradition, in Jewish wisdom, the first step is focusing yourself on not speaking evil about other people. We can't get to unity, as Rabbi Sittner says, we can't get to unity in this abstract thought realm, this higher consciousness realm right away, where we love people infinitely out of our bodies. We're not on that level right now. But one thing that you can do right now, and I'm not talking about if someone's, God forbid, abusive and you need to talk to somebody, there's obviously nuances and how this stuff, but as a general framework, don't talk negatively about people. And if you know that other people are going to talk negatively about someone else, when you talk positively, even be careful about talking positively. Use your words to talk about ideas. Use your words to talk about the greatness of the person in front of you. Use your words for so many things. Careful what news you consume. There's so much Lashon Hara. It's terrible. Focus on using speech. Genesis, our neshama, our soul, in its onkelos in Aramaic, that says it's a ruach memamala. It's a speaking spirit. Don't lose your foundational gift of your soul of speech for Lashon Hara, for Motzei Shemra, for evil, derogatory, negative speech, for hurting people, God forbid. Let's start to love each other. Let's make this world cleaner and more loving and more peaceful, ultimately to the ultimate building of the Beis HaMikdash for the whole world. As Rav Itamar Schwartz says, that word zaher or zehirut or caution also is connected to the word same root as zohar, radiance. So there's a sense of shining. Make your words shine. And again, I don't want to get into a whole nuanced topic. Of course, there's times when people have to be critical about something in a certain way, in a respectful way. There's all these different nuances. But on a basic level, how can we use our words cautiously in order to shine? So thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe.